Hey, folks, welcome back to The Pulse. It is a Saturday, October 28th, and it's about 12:45 p.m. Central Texas time, and I want to welcome you back. This is an unusual stream. I don't usually stream on Saturdays, but there's a lot of exciting things happening, and I was inspired because some amazing things happened here on Friday, and I think it's important to share that with you. I think it's important to, one, encourage you, but also to talk to you about what I see unfolding and provide you with a little bit of education as it relates to um, a new economic order. That's the plan today, at least. I hope you're doing well. Um, I assume you're excited, right? There's a pump, right? There's a lot of exciting things. There's corrections. There's an increase in the number of streamers and content and excitement. And this is what we've been waiting for a long time. And I hope you're feeling better about things. I certainly am. But I'm also reminded. I'm reminded of what's really going on here. And so what I do here on this channel is I get deeper into what is the real, and I don't even mean macro of economic. I mean the macro of life. What's really going on here? What are we dealing with? And how do I see it? And I'm going to share with that with you today, but I hope you're doing well. Got some folks in the chat today. It's a little quieter here on the Western Front. Mud Hog, what's going on, Mud Hog? And ID, I've been seeing you online streaming. I appreciate you being here. What's up, Crypto Heartbeat and Texicans and Hexonium? Hex Father Matt, what's going on? Appreciate you. We had a long silence of the Lambos. Oh my gosh, I love it. It's so true. That's something that that I'm constantly reflecting on is what is the money doing? The money is doing some amazing things to everyone, right? We saw this at Bitcoin, we saw this with Ethereum, we saw this with Hex. This is an unusual time to be alive. There's a lot of change. If you listen to Friday's Right Side Up with Steve Staggs, you'd learn a lot about what is happening. What is happening in this world and all this change. And of course, as we look out to it, I asked him some questions that I want to talk to you about. And one of those questions that I asked him is, how do we look at things like the guy that goes into a bowling alley and shoots up all of his friends, right? Kills like 18 to 22 people. What about this stuff that's happening in the Middle East? What about all these bad things that are going on? And how do we look at those things and how do we see it? And then what is happening in the world and how do we look at crypto? I think for a lot of people, it's very, very short-sighted. Even if you think you're a long-term holder, it's short-sighted because there's something much greater going on. I peruse the Twitters, the X, if you will, and I like to see what's going on and what people are arguing about and the extreme things people say. And they tell a lot about where their head and their heart is. And it was interesting. There was this challenge that was going on between people as it relates to 5 stakes, right? Nagabo was saying, you're stupid if you're doing this. And it's funny how all of this stuff plays itself out, because you've got people constantly drawing each other off sides. And I think we're missing the point. And that's what I want to talk about today. I believe that there is a new economic order. And of course, you don't have to be a genius to figure that one out. What is the new economic order that is happening? And what are we seeing transpiring here? A new economic order. Well, the old economic order, at least in the United States, has been built on the back of essentially, and I apologize for my camera. I'm having some issues here. Has been built on this fractional reserve banking model. And if we really look at what happened when we were on the gold standard, prior to even the beginning of the Fed, but then ultimately leading up to 1972 in Bretton Woods, and this is when we came off of the gold standard. What was happening before that is things were regulated based on the amount of gold and the value of gold, and it sat for a long time at around $18.96 an ounce, and then it went up to 20 some odd dollars for a long, long time. And then once we got off of that gold standard, I would ask the question, why? And I'm not going into the whole Jekyll Island stuff right now, but I'm just talking about, or the Fed, but really this idea of what drove us to do that. And I'm going to use, just some simple, I guess, analogies to describe this. We want things now, right? And you think about what is capital that has been freed up. What did separating from the gold standard do for us? Well, it provided essentially lubricant to trade and transactions, right? The ability and access to capital really drove a lot of things, right? The Industrial Revolution, technology, all of these things, the ability to get access to capital. Because if you think about this, anything that you have an idea for, right, has to be generally financed. You're typically not financing it yourself. And so we've seen this absolute boom of things. But what have we done in this system of fractional reserve banking? Besides the fact that we've had really loose money, we've also basically fed ourselves immediate gratification. Okay, so think about that for a second. When you have access to capital, and this isn't just the most recent, spending, but it's more of this idea of let's just agree that this is the value. And I think that when you're an elite and you're running the money and you look at the people out there and you're like, they're just a bunch of dum-dums. We can do this if we want to do this. We'll separate these things from the gold standard so that we have, free flowing money. And one, we can get power with it and we can use that to get what we want now. And where are we in that model? Well, we're coming to the end of it. We're coming to the end in a crisis era of the money where we got everything. We got all of this, innovation. We got all of this progress, but we also have an insatiable desire for yield. And so the demand of this, because the money was separated, what do we decide to do? We basically look at money now and we say, you know what? We can always just reach into the pockets of the American people. And it's really people worldwide. What is giving $100 billion to Ukraine? What is financing wars? And what is essentially this, imperialism idea? It's like, well, if it's not tied to gold and we don't have to have something that really backs it, the American people aren't smart enough, or the world population of people aren't smart enough to know that when we say that it's backed by the good faith and credit of the United States of America, which is really you, because there's no value that's not created out of human, capability, right? Your creative ability is really where the value is, right? Goods and services, all this comes from our creative ability. It doesn't come from like my dog that creates a painting. That's not how it works. We take the things of our creative ability, right? And the proxy of that labor is money. When that money's not tied to something that's fixed or at least limited, we basically say, all right, we can essentially print as much as we want. But then when we want to do something, like we want to take over the world, we want to topple a government, we want to, exercise our power, the people are dumb enough that they're not going to push back when we reach into their pocket. And that's really what this is. When you say it's backed by the good faith and credit of the people, you're saying it's their labor. and you're going to steal their labor, right? In my opinion, your labor is your private property. And that's one of the fundamentals of the civilized society. But you've been duped, right? We've all been duped. That when we said we're going to go off of gold and go onto you, that you are now what we're using. And now we indiscriminately use that. So what do we have? $33 trillion in debt. Obviously GDP can't keep up with it. And so what are we seeing right now? We're seeing the failing of this system. Is it going to happen tomorrow? No, it's not happening tomorrow. This dollar hegemony and this dollar dominance in the world is going to last for a while. But what have we done? We've basically outsourced all of that inflation to others. You think it's bad right now? You're going into the grocery store and it's expensive. Just imagine if you're in, a country that is, denominating their debt in dollars, right? We've made it very difficult on other people. I mean, in a way, the U.S. is the last one that's going to fail in all of this because we've outsourced everything and we've let it ride on the back of the people of the world who have denominated their debt in dollars. And so we're coming to the end of this. In scripture, it talks about Babylon burning in an hour. And you could, make up, what is Babylon? Is it New York City? Is it the American financial system? Is it the Western, idea? Is it, there's a lot of different things. But what it talks about is that we look onto this Babylon where we used to buy and sell. And it had all of these things that we did economically, and it's burning fast. Now, is an hour literal? Maybe, maybe not. But what we're dealing with here is the crisis. And this crisis era happens generationally, but this is a really unique one. This is a really big one. So a lot of people are, looking at this and, well, I just want to get mine while I can. And I think that's, the short-sighted view of what's really happening is, well, I see an asymmetric benefit of, Bitcoin went up a lot and Ethereum went up a lot and Hex went up a lot. And here we got a new layer 1 on the Pulse chain. That's great. And let me get mine. Hey, there's this new project and that new project. And let me, trade these things and let me get mine. And of course, if you think about it, let's just extrapolate this out. What do you want? What do you want? What do I want? Well, I'm going to make an assumption that you think that if you have a bunch of money, that you'll have more security personally, and it'll be easier for you, and you can kind of relax and not have to work. I think the general approach that people look at are like, well, financial security, what does that mean? Well, financial security, what is it? Well, what's the end goal of all of that? So if we drill farther into, now you're financially set. Let's just say you're rich. Let's say you got plenty of Lambos. You got unlimited resources. Now what? And that's always the challenge because we're always chasing something that we think is going to bring us the thing that we want, right? We think that money is. Well, obviously there's a reason for that because resources are required for you to operate and function. And you see rich people and you're envious of them. And you're like, well, if I was like that, well, you've seen what happens to rich people, right? They get rich and then they have more trouble, or they don't really understand that money is just a tool and that we animate that tool for some purpose. But once you get really rich, you have to start thinking differently about this because there's not, the curve declines, right? When you look at what money does for somebody, let's say you're somebody who is renting, you're not married, you're working and you're making it fine. If you had a lot of money dumped on your head, your lifestyle and probably your enjoyment of your life would go up almost parabolically. And for people who are living on the edges of things, right, just hand to mouth, have a lot of debt, boy, it can create some really interesting freedom and buy back your time, right? You get more time to do other things. So the question is, what are you going to do with that time? And I think that's the big question is you have to look past this. And I'm hoping that what I can share with you today with this concept and topic of a new economic order, that when you have resources, you have a choice. When you don't have resources, you got a choice too. You've got free will to make these choices. The question is, in what nature and in what character are you going to animate this tool of the money that you have? So I asked ChatGPT and DALL-E 3 to give me an image that I could illustrate this with for you. And so on the left-hand side of this, you see these skulls and this, it looks demonic, right? Doesn't it look so bad? That's evil. That's on the left-hand side of this. And then the right-hand side, this seems like more blissful, right? Let's just say the right-hand side is good and the left-hand side is evil. So one of the things I think is important, and if you've listened to anything I've done on every Friday for the last 27 Fridays, Steve has talked about, and we've talked about a lot, is what is the nature and character? When we recognize that tools are neutral, money is neutral, right? Any tool, the internet, streaming, technology, it's all neutral, right? Atomic energy or technology, atomic technology, it's either good or evil, right? It could be amazing clean energy for your country, or it could be a bomb. So we as humans with creative ability animate tools in a certain nature and character. So one of my friends lives in a town where all those people were shot, and I hear a lot of people, because I talk about my personal spiritual beliefs. They ask, well, how can good things happen or bad things happen to good people? Right. Well, if there's this God that's in charge of everything, why is it that everything is happening? And it's really a big aha for me is when you think about the nature of our decisions. The nature of our decisions are motivated by nature and character. We are animating these tools with um, a certain nature, a certain character. And what's interesting about this new economic order and what I see in the pulse chain and in this community is what's at the core. I always point out um, David Lee, right? He came to my dad's funeral, right? Why do I do that? Why have I done that for like 2 years? I do that because at the core of what he did was a spirit of love. He knew somebody was struggling, and he took the time and energy out and he animated his vehicle to drive across from southwestern Indiana to Michigan. And he came and sat with me at my dad's funeral. What is that? Is that money? Did he come pay me? Did he like hand me a Lambo? Did he, send me some tokens? No, no. He came and he expressed love. And what was that love? How did it manifest itself? He animated himself, his car, his time for the purposes of saying, hey, I know that this is difficult. I'm here. And what does that do? It speaks volumes. And I talk about it every single time I get on stream. What is he animating? But the same thing is true, whether it's your vehicle coming across, to visit with somebody that's struggling, or if it's money, or if it's tokens, but we're in a really unique time. This is true and has always been true, is that there's a certain nature and character. And so I want to bring you back. If you're not somebody that's a student of the Bible, you probably have heard of this, right? There's like this temptation of Christ. You've heard of that. I'm sure everyone has. And he comes out of the wilderness and Satan appears to him, right? And you guys know this story in general, right? Here is the ruler of the air. This is the one that has control and power in this world, which is a restricted space in the creation. And here's Jesus coming out, and he literally says to him, hey, if you will essentially give me your authority, bow down before me, I'll give you all of this, right? And he says, turn these stones into bread. Okay, so imagine you have the capability. And one of the things that's interesting in that transaction there, or in that interaction, is that Satan knew that Jesus had the capability of turning these stones into bread. And he said, all right, if you do these things, if you bow before me and recognize me, turn these stones into bread. And what does he say to Satan? Right? So here's a man that I think is acceptable to say that was animating his life in that moment in the nature and character of his father, the God of all creation. And what did he say? He says, man does not live on bread alone, but out of every word that comes out of the mouth of God. So what is he illustrating there? He's illustrating that it's not about getting this thing, right? We don't live on bread alone. Well, then if life for him, and what he was communicating it was life is out of the nature and character of the one who created it all. And so there's one who is tempting him saying, I will give you all of this. There's 3 temptations in that interaction. And he was talking about, I'll give you all of this power. I'll give you all of these things. Well, we know that that's a lie. We know that when evil or Satan, or just even if you're not a believer in this stuff, you say, well, are there evil things? Absolutely. Could you align yourself with evil powers? Sure, you could. Many people have done it. What does it promise you? It promises you power. What's really interesting about power itself is that that's essentially what we see on the first layer of money. It offers us something. I think a lot of people, like when we say one Lambo, it's just a meme, it's a joke. What is it saying to us? It's saying, hey, look what you could have. Look who you could be. And what it does for you is you go, like, what would that afford me? And some people would say, well, I would provide for my family, and there would be a character of, a nature and character of love and care and all that. Fine. But then there's another side of you in all of us that are like, yeah, if I had this, what would people might see me as this? What if I had that really expensive Rolex? Or what if I could socially signal this way? Or what if I had this Lambo? What does that afford me? People will look at me and think that I'm better than I am. I will associate myself with my wealth or with this so that I can cover the thing that I feel inadequate about. And there's so many people who are insecure and they see money because they see people in life using money as a means to cover their inadequacy. Question is, if you have basically peace in all circumstances, you're not insecure. And so you don't look at tools to cover things. And it's interesting that Adam and Eve covered that which was different about them in the garden. They covered their genitalia, which was different, right? They looked across at each other and went, hold on, those things are different. And they were ashamed. We cover the things that we're inadequate about, and we use the tools to do that. And when we see the money, we see, all right, so I would ask you this big question, and this is all related to this new economic order. You're going to have a choice. You have a choice every moment of every day of your own, ability um, to make a choice to be kind or not, right? To be thoughtful, like David Lee, right? You have that opportunity. Sometimes you use those things to manipulate, right? Like if I do something good for you, you'll do something good for me. So what's at the core of what's animating these tools? And in this scenario, we basically have a binary choice. And what really struck me about Friday that I wanted to communicate to you today was the fact that when I think about somebody that would go in, this guy who was hearing voices, this guy that was mentally unstable, his girlfriend had broken up with him, and he goes in and he shoots up his friends. He kills all these people. I think 3 of his best friends were killed in that bowling alley. Or I think about what's happening in the Middle East. Steve said to me the other day, he said that decisions are the seeds of this reality that we live in. We make these decisions, and these decisions are either binary, animated by a certain nature and character. And so when we think about the money and the tools or whatever it may be, and this is really our actions, our own self-control, who we are. And what's amazing about this to me is that we're sitting on the edge of a new economic order. And we are recognizing something that's, I think, screaming at us. And we're seeing the benefits of community. And so, what is that? What are the benefits of community? Well, at the core of it is this concession. So, stick with me here on this one. When I go into a meetup, and I'm going to be going here on the 4th of November, I'm going to meet up with RG3 and KG and Black Hexakin and Wild SJ, and we're going to be in Austin for this Million Pulse tour. And we're going to be meeting people and shaking hands and all that stuff. What is the spirit that is within those meetups? It's a spirit of love. And you're like, well, that's really kind of gooey, man. Well, I'm an old person. At least I see myself as that has some experience. I've got some kids. I understand what this looks like. Love isn't what you are thinking it is. It's a consideration for others in addition to yourself. So when I go to these events, what do I see? A spirit of unity. And it's not like we all believe the same thing politically or we all believe the same thing. No, actually, in fact, it's highly variegated. There are people who from all different backgrounds and all different religious views, all different, everything, political. But what we recognize is there's something out front. And right now, it just happens to be the money. But there's so much more packed in that. We define it as, well, Hex going to the moon, man. Diamond hands, big bags, pulse chain, layer 1, pulse X, let's go. I love it, right? I love that there is some incentive there. But what's behind all of that? What's behind all of that is hope. We are hopeful that the future is better. And in light of what we're seeing, this world, that the nature and character of what we're seeing exposed in this world is dark and it is evil, in my opinion. And so, what has happened over this time? And you could say, well, where did it begin? Well, it probably began in the garden. But what are we seeing now play out? Right? Why do we go into places like Iraq and take out their people? Or why do we go into places like do a proxy war with Ukraine? Right? What is the end goal of warmongers? Power. So what do? We kill and we destroy and we animate the tools that we have, whether it be financial tools or weapons of war. Why? Because we want to get ours. We say it's because we want to protect people, right? It's in the, in our national security interests. But what's really driving this is a model of scarcity. We are looking at things as if there's not enough to go around. We're not considering others in addition to ourselves. Because you can imagine, just like I can, that there's a family, and I've seen videos of this. There are Palestinian families, there are Israeli families, there are families everywhere. There are regular people and civilians. And what has happened is we have taken these resources and tools, right? And we've handed over our authority to these governments who call themselves sovereign. And they're not sovereign. We are the sovereigns because we created this government. And it's animated these tools in a nature and character of one that wants to kill and destroy. But what this new economic order promises us is that in community with a spirit of love, that what we end up having here is the ability to create a new future. That new future is one that's based on abundance and is considerate of others in addition to ourselves. What makes the pulse chain so attractive is the nature and character of Richard Hart. And you're like, well, that Richard Hart guy, he's he twerks. He said bad words. He talks about his pee-pee. Okay. But one of the things that I look and I see in Richard Hart is I see an insecure person like you and me. I see a person who wants the glory, who wants the respect, who wants to change the world, who wants to help people live longer. Whatever it may be, there is a spirit of advocacy, right? If he was just trying to get his and step on your neck to get his, he would have rugged it a long time ago. He would have used and animated the power that he had and the tools that he had to get his. But what did he decide to do? Hey, warn you about things, call the top, give you some self-help books, whatever it may be. And I'm not advocating for this, philosophy or not. But what I'm saying is there is a spirit of consideration. And this has a lot of different layers, right? There's a whole gradient to pure love versus, hey, I want to watch out for you in addition to myself. It's just good game mechanics. In 1994, the Nobel Prize was given to John Nash for the Nash equilibrium. It was his contribution to game theory. It was called the Nash equilibrium. And we know that based on the concept of win-win. Why did he receive that? Because he said, hey, if we consider others in addition to ourselves, we win. Well, there's a basic premise to that Richard Hart is utilizing. He's saying, hey, I care about you. Do I feel that? Dad, you never say you love me. He does. He cares. But what is he doing when he's going this distance to help prove that blockchains and code and speech and you pushing that button on MetaMask is truly speech? It's advocating for you. How's he advocating you when he warns you about Celsius and FTX? Now, does he benefit? Yes. We're not saying that you don't benefit in this process. But when you understand that actually in community, the sovereign people that we are, when we animate the tools in the nature and character of the one who created it all, what we're doing is we're extending love, which is a function of abundance. I think everybody around that doesn't have war powers, that's not a warmonger, that doesn't have the tools to click a button and explode something, looks at this and says, you know what? I'm okay if other people win while I win. That's what is in front of us. The pulse chain, in my opinion, led by the ethos of Richard Hart, the advocate that he is that this future needs to have an alternative. It needs to have an alternative to evil. It needs to have an alternative to scarcity. And so the question is, are we going to come together as a community? And I think what's exciting is we're like, yeah, it's pumping, man. Money's being pushed over into Ethereum and woohoo. Great. Those are leading indicators of something. But there's something much, much bigger. And the reason that I put the Texan logo in this thumbnail and the Pulse Chain logo in this thumbnail is that the extension of resources impacts so many things, but it comes directly out of your personal heart. And it's so fascinating. Richard Hart, the strong heart. What is coming out of your heart in this? And are you animating these tools? So the question is how you speak, how you treat your spouse, how you treat people in the community, what you write on Twitter and X, whether you decide to pick up the gun and put it to somebody's head in the foxhole. At the end of the day, are decisions that you make that are either going to create this future of abundance or not. And the question I would say this is you don't think that your individual decisions have much impact, and they do. Because the accumulation and the consolidation of all of those decisions that we make creates a future that we want to have. And I believe that that's part of what my calling and mission is. How do you unlock generosity? It's trapped. It's locked up right now. Why? Because we're animating the tools from a position of scarcity, and I'm going to get mine at all costs. And so I would be even willing to kill you. That's what we're saying in the world. I'm willing to kill you to get mine. I think if you would ask regular people that don't have, war powers and don't have, weapons of war and don't have the button to push, would say, yeah, I like that idea. I like the idea that if we were to align ourselves with the very abundance of creation, right? I put a seed in the ground and what do I get? A kernel of corn turns into an 1800x. Do you know that? Isn't that crazy? One kernel of corn turns into a stalk of corn. It usually has 2 to 3 ears. There's 800 kernels on an ear of corn in 16 rows. What? Yeah, that's called an abundance. It's called a yield. And so what do? We take that kernel of corn, we crack open the earth, and we partner with the creation that we live on, the dirt and the sunshine. You don't create that stuff, the rain, all of this. No. There is a structure and a framework to this creation. And when you partner with it, it creates an abundance. And so the seed, the seed, is this amazing analogy for the future of everything. You are a seed. Your resources are a seed. But those seeds don't grow themselves. They have to partner with the construct of this place that we are in. And there is a structure to it, and it is, by nature, abundant. But what have we done? In order to get mine, this asymmetric thing, I can get more of mine. Well, when I animate it with my desire to get power. So what's interesting, let's go back to the temptation. He comes out of the wilderness. He's like, yeah, I know you're hungry. Yeah, turn the stones into bread. I know you can. No, man does not live on bread alone, but out of every word that comes out of the mouth of God. So the question is this: the one who created everything is alive and he speaks. And the question is, what if there was one who was of infinite intelligence? And that if you said, you know what, maybe I'll go that way. Maybe I'll partner and try that on for side. And maybe what I'll do is I will consider others in addition to myself. And I'll say, you know what, I'm going to align myself with the very nature and character of the creation. What would it look like? Well, you'd be thoughtful of other people. Well, what would that look like in your home? Right? What if you weren't somebody who was trying to cover up your inadequacy? You weren't somebody who was trying to cover your insecurity, but you were somebody who was saying, you know what? Give us this day our daily bread. I'm going to be strengthened in my own spirit, and I'm going to give rather than take. What does that look like? Well, it looks like David Lee. It looks like David Lee coming from southwestern Indiana all the way to my dad's funeral. We do things differently when we animate the tools in the nature and character of the creator. And that's the case I would make. Well, what do we want? I think actually what you want is an abundance. The framework for it is right in front of you. And we live in a time where we can actually make that kind of change. But I think what we've been fooled about is that the decisions that I personally make don't really matter. Well, they're not consequential. It's like, well, my vote is going to get canceled out by someone else's vote. It all starts with you and it starts with me. How do I see this thing? Do I have enough self-control to go, you know what? I really could, cut the corner here and I could get mine, but that person's going to lose. Why does Richard say, hey, probably shouldn't trade? You know the reason he says that? It's because you're stealing from somebody on the other side. We're meant to create value. He often talks about this. He's like, if you want a picture of a pony, you can draw one. And I think a lot of people miss what he's saying. You have the ability to draw a picture of a pony. Well, in the NFT world, you're like, well, maybe somebody really likes ponies. But you didn't have a picture of a pony before, and now you do. That is what separates us from the animals. That's what makes us unique. And that's actually the core of value, because it's an extension of your creative ability, because nothing in this world that exists wasn't first thought about in the mind of a man or a woman. Period. So that extension of your time and effort, maybe you drive a truck, maybe you serve, I work hourly. Maybe you're a doctor. You do some sort of task with your creative ability that creates value that we basically give you money for. All that is a representation of you, your proxy of labor. But this government, who's convinced you that they are sovereign over you, have basically said, we will reach into your pocket and steal from you and do whatever we want. That's what's going on right now in the world. And what is this crisis area leading us to? And why did I put the Texan token logo in here? Because it's a time that the real sovereigns say no. And I'm so proud of the Texas nationalist movement. I'm so proud of people who see that Texas independence isn't just a political thing. It's actually a fundamental taking back of our own sovereignty. We find these truths to be self-evident. What is this concept of self-evident? Well, it's obvious to everyone that we have certain inalienable rights that are given to us by a creator, not by the state. But the lie that's been told is that the state is sovereign and that you are a subject. You are not subject. You're only subject to God, right? You were given these self-evident, inalienable rights. And what did we do? We said, let's create a better union. That's how it's all started. I don't know if you realize that. Is that we say, well, this is a better way for us to do it that might lead us to life, liberty, and happiness. The pursuit of it, at least. How's that going? When you look out and you see, how are things going? Maybe we ought to make different decisions. But so many people feel so paralyzed that their decisions can't have a difference. And what are we seeing in this pulse chain community? What are we seeing in crypto, which seems so odd? Really? Yeah, the fundamental nature of value, which is an extension of you, is changing. And that you and I can say, you know what? If we work together in love and consider others in addition to ourselves, we can create a future that is abundant. So the big question is this. A lot of people are just like, I just want to get rich, man. All this stupid, philosophical crap, man. Well, that's the problem. I want you to recognize your role. You're way more powerful than you think. And I don't mean powerful in the lording over. But here's the thing. When you get to be my age and you see people pass and you stare at your dad in the casket, you realize how short this thing is. And in my opinion, if we do not lead each other to love and good deeds, if we don't highlight David Lee, if we don't remember and recognize the beauty of the Hexagon community, if we don't lift up and praise RG3, nobody's perfect. But that's the reason. His nature and character, Hexo, Coffee, Maddie, Dollar Cost Crypto, all of these guys that literally went through the gauntlet for us. And here we are, man, the sun is shining. The light is coming through the crack in the door. We're seeing the next bull run coming. What's at stake here is not just you getting rich. What's at stake here is you getting rich with others in community, because it's the only way it's going to happen. Because it's not a true abundance otherwise. But this is a fundamental shift in the economic order. But to think that if you could change the economic order and the nature and character of the balance of power in the world, would you? I think that's what's so exciting about the future. We've got AI. We've got all of these things advancing, right? We see all of these things differently. We got these communication channels. We've got the ability to connect like this on streaming and connect with one another. And what do we see from that? Commonality, right? I think the old idea, I think about my grandfather who was born in 1911, went through the Depression and World War II. He just wanted to get done with that stuff. And what happened? The baby boomer generation was created. Why? Because he was tired. He was tired. You grow up in the Depression, and then you go to World War II, and you come back, and you're actually alive. And you're like, I just want to move to the suburbs and have some kids. And then what ended up happening is this nation within a nation was birthed. It was the baby boomer generation. And what did those people who were tired say? They said, you know what? Kids are to be seen and not heard. And what came out of that? Boy, the 60s. And who's leading our country now? Baby boomers. And I'm not trying to just like, if you're a baby boomer, like you're evil. No, I'm saying it's the product of all of this. This is a new era. We're coming into leadership. And so the people that are in Generation X, like myself, who don't trust authority, are looking at this and saying, this system's broken. Well, no kidding. That's obvious. So who do you see that's out there in leadership? And it's really interesting. You don't have to like these people, but who are these new leaders? Well, it's Tucker Carlson. It's Elon Musk. It's Joe Rogan. I'm not saying political leaders. Who are the people that are communicating into this culture? It's Russell Brand. There's a number of people, right? And some people you agree with and some people you hate. But at the end of the day, there's a whole different feel from people who are in Generation X. These people that were 1 foot in the analog world and 1 foot in the digital world. And it's our job, if you're a Gen Xer, it's our job to fix this place. The question is there a real fix? And I do think there is. And I think it's related to our own personal nature and character. What decisions are you going to make today in the next minute? But that doesn't have an effect. Well, I mean, what's the butterfly effect? Do you believe that your decisions make a difference? I'll tell you this. When I got my act together and I'm prayed up and I am in a good place, I don't need anything from anyone else. And so what do I end up doing? I give. I walk into the house and I'm thinking about how I bless and protect my family. But you know what? When I'm pissed off and when I'm mad, what ends up happening? Destruction. So the question is, you've got to have your own personal self-control in all of this stuff. But what would it look like if you animated yourself and the tools of your money in the nature and character that was meant to bless and protect? What if that was your idea? Well, I see that in Richard Hart. How crazy is that? You're like, what? Is that what you see in Richard Hart? Yeah, I see somebody who wants to bless and protect. Well, tell me how that works, Crypto Harpy. What is a blessing and protecting? Well, I don't want you to get wrecked. I don't want you to pick up pennies in front of freight trains. What's driving this? Well, there's some other things driving it. I want the glory. What's the glory? I want people to recognize that this is the right way to do it. Yeah, I built a better Bitcoin. Okay, great. You're going to get that credit. But why? What's the whole point of it? Okay, now you're rich. Get over yourself. Buy the crap that you want. Now let's actually do something. Get your time back. Do all that stuff. Okay, get it out of your system. Buy 12 pairs of pants. Buy 16 cars. Do whatever you need to do to satiate that desire that you are secure. And now let's get to work. There's a new economic order coming, but the implications of it done right is an abundance. It's driven by all of these things coming together at one place. And so when I look out at the world and I see absolute utter destruction, when I see people that are just indiscriminately killing civilians, or when I see people that are walking into places and shooting up their friends, what is the spirit that is driving that? It's certainly not one that's the nature and character of blessing and protecting. It's a nature and character of destruction and evil. And how do we become neutered? How do we become ineffective? The way we become neutered and ineffective is by going along with this scarcity mindset and model. It's interesting that it all starts at home, right? How do you change the world? Can I change what's happening in the Middle East by the decisions I make at home? Yep, you can. I don't see how that works, man. It starts with you. It starts with you. Well, it's naturally happened in this community. Why am I doing this still? Why am I on 559 videos later? Because I see hope in this community. People working together, high-fiving each other, going, you know what? There's more to this than just the money. But I want to say to you this, I think there's even more money and resources that come with this attitude of abundance. I've told you many times that my calling in life is to unlock global generosity. I was specifically told that. That's what you're going to do, unlock global generosity. Oh, well, that sounds pretty highfalutin, doesn't it? Like, that sounds kind of weird. What does it mean? Well, I was given the story of the feeding of the 5,000. And if you know that story of the feeding of the 5,000, there's all these people that went out to listen to this guy talking, right? He was a teacher. His name was Jesus. He got some buddies with him. And they heard about this guy and they're like, hey, let's go out there. And they took their families out and they said that there was probably at least 10,000, if not 15,000 people. They counted the men, right? Basically 5,000 men. And what's interesting about this story is they go outside of the town. And at that time in the first century, there wasn't an Applebee's, there wasn't a 7-Eleven, there wasn't a place to go get some food, right? A McDonald's. And so what they did is they went out with their families and they went to this field to listen to this guy talk. And in that process, a guy named Andrew, a guy who was following Jesus, said, hey, how in the world are we going to feed all of these people? It's getting that time. They're hungry. How are we going to feed them? He's like, we don't have, enough to give them even a bite. And what's really interesting is a boy. This isn't one of the disciples. This isn't Jesus himself. This is a boy. This is you and me. A boy probably, and it doesn't account for this in the Gospels, but he literally is probably like, hey, mom, dad, they don't have enough food. I just overheard this guy Andrew talking to Jesus. Like, how are we going to feed these people? Hey, we brought food, didn't we, mom, dad? We brought food. And they're like, oh, son, so naive of a child to think that our 5 loaves and 2 fish that we brought for us, that we worked hard for and created, would actually feed 5,000 or more people? No. And what did the boy think? He probably thought, well, I've seen this Jesus. I've heard about this Jesus fellow. He creates stuff from nothing. He's does miracles. And the naivete of a boy to give this idea that he would go out there and go, hey, you can have what I bring. And here's the thing, that the evidence of why this is so significant is because 5 loaves and 2 fish is not lunch. Think about if you're going on a picnic somewhere, right? You're going out to the lake. You get your coolers, you get some stuff. You probably bring more than you need. And so what did he do? 5 loaves and 2 fish. You don't eat 5 loaves of bread yourself. That you brought it for your family. That was what you needed in this provision as you go out for the day to go listen to this guy at this concert, at this lecture series. And what did this boy want to do? He probably said to his parents, let's give it all. And he takes his 5 loaves and 2 fish and he gives it to Jesus. And what happens? And a pastor friend of mine said, let me ask you this question. We call this a miracle. So let me ask you a question. Did Jesus have a bag and it had a bunch of bread and fish and he just lugged that up to the top of this hill? Right? Because a lot of people would say, well, this is a miracle, right? Jesus created matter from no matter. He just created, boom, boom, just pulled it out of a bag. Oh, here we go, bread and fish. But he said, let me ask you this. It's no less of a miracle, but think of it this way. Jesus takes the bread, he breaks it, and he says to the disciples, go and hand this stuff out. What if you were somebody that was sitting, on your blanket at the concert next to the boy, and you're looking over and you see this boy talking to his family. He's like, no, mom, dad, we can give it all. And the parents are like, man, you don't know how it works. But all right, son, this Jesus guy, yeah, he's pretty amazing. Why don't you go? Yeah, okay, fine. And he takes all that he has and he gives it to him. That's us. That's us. That's what we're doing in this Pulse Chain community. We're giving it all. What does it do? Well, the people see this, right? And they start handing this out. And imagine in the first century, you've got your backpack, man, and your cooler. No, you brought with you, but likely the things that you worked hard for, that bought the bread and fish that you had or whatever you brought with you, you were holding tight to. And that's us, right? We're holding tight to these things. This is mine. These are my tokens. This is my money. This is my resource. This is mine. And you see somebody going, hold on, you're going to give everything you've got? Well, what are you going to eat? Well, I'm believing that this guy, Jesus, can do this. Well, guess what? They hand this stuff out. and they say there was 12 basketfuls left over. They collected up all the pieces that were left over. Where did that come from? I think people that are religious, which I'm not, would say, well, yeah, Jesus, like he just created matter from no matter. He just boop, boop, bread and no one else. Well, no, no, no. When we give, we unlock the generosity of others because they realize there's enough to go around. In fact, there are 12 basketfuls left over. It's no different than today. What is the thing that we're giving, though? You probably see this and say, well, that bread and is that my money? No, 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 no. For David Lee, it was his time. What is he giving? What are you giving? Don't just see this as, well, I've got to give my crypto away. No, this isn't like I got to give my money away, or I've got to give my food away, or I need to go work at the pantry. No, this is a fundamental idea of how you see the world. Are you one who understands the very nature of abundance? And so in community, through this communication thing that works on Metcalfe's law, what attracts people to it? What attracts people to it is its difference. It is differentiated. Why? Because there's more to it than just getting one Lambo. There's something more here. And you see it, Mr. Anderson, when you go to church and you pay your taxes. You see the framework of the nature and character of the creation. And as you align yourself with it, it's meant to be abundant. And so when you animate it with evil, right? When you look at this slide and you're like, I'm going to get mine. I'm going to step on your head and get mine. I don't care. I'm going to rug this thing. I'm going to draw you off sides. I'm going to take advantage of these trailer trash hexicans. Right? I'm going to create my project and get my sacrifice and take my money and run. Okay. What nature and character is animating those tools? So when I look at Texas Independence and I look at the Texan token and I see these people, what did we decide to do? Give away what we want to receive. Give away what you want to receive. What do you want to receive? More love? Give more love away. Oh, you want more friendship? Be a better friend. Oh, this is counterintuitive. You mean I got to give? Yeah. You want somebody to like you? Shut up. Ask them about themselves. That's how you make friends. Not, well, let me tell you a little bit more about me. I called the top. Turns people off. Folks, there's a new economic order. Everything is changing, and it is in our hands. And we have leadership in Richard Hart that is creating a whole new economic order. What is he doing? He saw this in advance. This is crazy. I think is literally driven by the very creator of the world, that he's using Richard Hart. He's using you and me. He's using us in this process to show people that there's another way. And how does this all play out? I'm not a prophet, but I'm going to tell you how I think it plays out. I think what ends up happening is all of those who are animating these tools right now, Elizabeth Warren, Gary Gensler, all these people in this world that are trying to clamp down on crypto. This cat's out of the bag. Pandora's box has been open, and they're seeing that it is going to threaten their power. We won't have the money for the wars, and we won't have money for these things. Yeah, we're going to bankrupt you. And you know what this reminds me of? Is Jesus walking into the temple and turning over the tables. This is what's happening. The tables are going to get turned over. Babylon's going to burn in an hour. And when people are looking around and they're disoriented, they're going to be like, where do good people go? Well, physically, they may come to Texas. But you know where else they may go? They may literally go to the Pulse Chain. Because where is there going to be a place that's not going to compromise these principles, that's going to be based on the nature and character of abundance, that blesses and protects, that creates a alternative to transact within? Because everybody else is going to compromise their principles and do deals with Visa. The beauty of this whole Richard Hart Hexagon thing is the fact that it wasn't on centralized exchanges. It was incredibly grassroots. And the fact that Richard kind of stepped back because this SEC thing only motivates us to speak even louder. And if it wasn't for the leadership of RG3 and Hexologist and Coffee and all these guys at the beginning who saw the future brought their skills and ability to the table. It's just like their 5 loaves and 2 fish. They gave what they had, their experience, their knowledge, and their love for one another. And they come out and put the guns up and say, ahoy there, mateys. This is really, really special. And if you don't see it, you're missing it. Well, I hope that you come along. And if you're driven by just the mad gains and diamond hands and big bags, and we're going to win and we're going to be rich and people are going to look at me and I'm going to have everything, fine, you can come along. But for those of us who understand that this is a pivotal moment in the history of civilization, that what this can lead to is actually a reordering and a realignment with the way that it was created to be. We call that in the scriptures, it talks about, they asked Jesus how to pray. What a great question. What do you say? He said, "Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name," meaning you are the Holy One. You created it all. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So in heaven, it's obviously a little better than here. You imagine that? I don't think in heaven they're shooting up bowling alleys. Your kingdom come and your will be done. Well, what is that? When Jesus said, "Hey, man does not live on bread alone, but out of every word that comes out of the mouth of God." So when we align ourselves with every word that comes out of the mouth of God, of a living person who literally speaks, and we animate the tools in his nature and character to bless and protect other people, what do we get? Abundance. Joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control. There's fruit that comes from the seed of this tree. It's powerful stuff, folks. And we have all the tools aligned. And then we have leadership who's actually going. And here's the thing. I have read the book. I know how this thing ends. We win. And the winning is not what you think winning is. And it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. But it starts with you and it starts with me. And so why do I do this? Because I want to bless and protect you. It's not my sole job. I just want to be the conduit by which this message is communicated. Everyone else is going to look at a chart, right? Everyone's going to look at a chart and they're going to say, "Hey, bull run," and look at the happening and look at all this stuff that's going on. That's great, right? Read the tea leaves, the horoscope for men, right? Astrology for men. Fine. Let's look at the lunar cycles. Let's look at the solar cycles. Let's try to get an edge to get mine. Fine. There's way, way, way more that's going on here. And it's not just about you, because we only win together. Because look what we've tried. Look what we've built. The idea of you just getting yours, what has that created in this world? Destruction. But what happens? And so I'm going to bring this down with my last point, and then we'll get back into the chat and sign off. What does it mean to be unified? And for those of you who are married, there's a concept, when you're dating, everybody's got their hands all over everybody, right? Oh man, what are we trying to do? We're trying to connect, right? And so it's really interesting. And if you've ever been married, you know this. When people are dating, they can't keep their hands off themselves. But you get married for 20 years and it's different. Well, what is the wedge that tries to get in between you? Well, what happens in the home if I can make you ineffective if you don't have unity with your spouse? And what is that meant to be? It's a picture. The picture of marriage, the picture of that is a union, oneness. What is oneness but protection? If you're a nerd like I am and you like to think about analogies that are, I don't know, like security in technology, think about the open ports on a router. Port 80 is where the internet comes through. But all these other open ports, if you leave these open ports open, things can get in. And these things can get in to distract you and to get you off center. And union, not only union in marriage, but union in community, like-mindedness, consideration, bearing each other's burdens, extending love and grace to one another, what it ends up doing is amazing. It shuts those ports, and we constantly go, all right, this day, as I wake up and rub my eyes and sit on the edge of my bed, what am I seeing? All right, what do you want me to do today? How am I going to extend and animate the tools of my life, my body, everything in the nature and character of the one who created it all, and bless and protect those that are around me? What does that look like? Or am I going to be selfish, cover everything, hide behind these coverings, and am I going to, destroy things just to get mine? You're like, wow, that's a lot. That's a lot wrapped up into one. Really? Is the pulse chain accomplish all that? Does Richard Hart accomplish all that? Not individually, but we do collectively. It's an idea that's time has come, and it's our job to lead. And to me, that's what's happening. And so why did we create the Texan token? Because we wanted to give a gift. I can't control what the TNM does with that gift. I can't control what people across the world who see Texas's independence is important. All I can say is it's a gift. That's it. Can we win together? Sure. Is it one ring to rule them all? Nope. But if we were to make a decision each day to say, you know what, how do I bless and protect? How do I animate these tools in the nature and character of blessing, protecting? The world will change, and it can change. And we have the rails and we have the infrastructure to make that change happen. I think it's the pulse chain. Why? Because it's properly decentralized and it's not going to be compromised by centralized players. Bring on the bull run. That's all I have to say about that. Let's say hello to you, and then we'll answer any questions you have. You got a question about this stuff? We'll talk about it. David Lee, the only one. What's up? Taryn, Hexy Quinn, Mobius, Sam Kemp, late arrival. He's here. Finn Bear, all the way from Finland. Dudeses, awesome. David Lee with the love. The system. That's why you pay our taxes, Mr. Anderson. Amen. Who dat? What's going on? Good man, David Lee. Hexy Quinn, Crypto Ethos, Tin Top. Get behind me, Satan. Amen to that. Mobius, what's going on? Praying is the new gold. Oh my gosh, you have no idea what you're saying. It's so powerful. We talk about with the Ophir, the very core of the Ophir story is that Ophir was the land of Solomon's gold. And it's interesting. I've been so interested in gold all my life. And it's interesting. I've asked the Lord about this, and he says, gold is in the hearts of men and women. And Hexonium, you are right on. Yes, lots of love. Unity is health, like health is wealth. Amen. Crypto Heartbeat is going hard on news streams these days. Well done, mate. Thanks, Crypto Pez. Appreciate you. David Lee says, please like, share, and subscribe. Hey, let's get the word out. Steve's quote was very powerful. Amen. Man can make money. Money cannot make a man. Amen. These Fridays with Steve Stagg shift worlds. Amen. ID, what's up? DJ Dougie Peach, always showing up. Thanks, man. Good to see you. Revolution and Hope, RH. There you go. There you go. I see that advocacy. Richard is a special person. I've said this before. People kind of laughed at me. I said, he's going to be one of the most important people in the 21st century. We're going to look back at this. And it's not like, well, he carries everything on his shoulders. No. But when you advocate for people's economic energy as an extension of their sovereignty as being speech, and you protect it, that's the key to changing the world, folks. Let's animate these things the right way. Mr. Peach. La Casa de Post Chain. Dixon Cider is back. Matt, whatever happened with Ivan Crypto Bobcat? Did he delete his own channel? I have no idea. Some people are not happy with him. I don't have any experience with whatever happened there, but he was strong like bull. And I'm sure with all the stuff that's going on in his country, that's a challenge. Love is the way. Sorry, I'm not so serious today. It's fine. Hence the topic at hand, the legend. Oh, they learned many Christians the cut and candy version of the gospel. Yeah. Well, and it's a form of godliness, but denying its power or its authority. No more taxation with bad representation. That's a great way of putting it. If you want to find yourself, lose yourself. What is that? That's the Eminem song, right? Rags does a good interpretation of that. What we talking today? Hexter, what's going on? Yes, you give and sacrifice. Money takes the form of the person who owns it. Yep. It's an extension of you. It's just a proxy. It's a representation of your labor. Fire, Hexaquin. Ah, Cookie did Chocolata. Let's all go to Pulse Chain, the land of abundance. There you go. It's like Candyland. There's love. Look at this love being spread around in the chat. He meant lose your mind, meaning ego, mind, identity, not real you. Even thinking is not real you. We came down here into dense dimension with a body, suit, and all these stuff you can see, not real you. There you go. Who dat? Cyviver's beginning with Strape Chat 2017. Well, there you go. So that was the Cyvive beginning. Identity blocks. Martin Luther King said, peace if possible, truth at all costs, defend yourself. We just energy beings with awareness. That's the secret. If you keep using your left brain, you're just going to find about this physical dimension and not going anywhere. Yeah. And, from my worldview, there's a spiritual side. There's two sides of this coin. There's this physical thing. But to make a really interesting point in that way is look at visible light. Visible light is like, we see a very narrow band, right? There's like, infrared. We don't see an infrared. I mean, in fact, when they put the FLIR system, that forward-looking infrared on those jets in 2004, we started seeing stuff in our skies, right? That's when we started following the tic-tac. There's more to this world than you can imagine. It's amazing. Which is just your creation by your imagination. Well, and you could even say that quantum is just that. When you observe it, it becomes material. There's a lot more here. Nobody's got the corner on the absolute truth. But the beauty of this is I want to align with the creator of all this, because as I see the creation, I recognize the creator. Stefan or Steven from Germany. What's up, Hexer? Yes, now I can keep my hands off myself. There you go. Get somebody else's hands on yourself, Hexter. What's up, Pineapple Love? Thanks for being here. And thanks for just journeying with us. That's the other thing I just want to communicate. I have a worldview. You don't have to have my worldview. I'm not trying to convert you to anything. If anything, I want to encourage you to love each other, right? Covers a multitude of sins. The Alan Parcel Project opened the gates to no good, and it's now the Jet Propulsion Lab. There you go. Dude, that's so awesome. I love these like rabbit hole things because I get it. CryptoPay, what's going on? John Parcel Project. The bull is coming, Adam. Stay strong. Matt, you need to have a magicians on your channel like Dynamo, Chris Angel, all these Chinese magicians. I am the Egyptian magician. Anyone that knows that reference, you win. I am the Egyptian magician. Samurai Dan, it's great to be part of such a historic community. Thanks for all you do. Samurai Dan, thank you for what you do. I remember all those streams that you guys are doing. What was that on, like the worst crypto show ever? Is that coming back? That's a big question I've got, Samurai Dan. Hornet UK1, TikTok, here we go. Bunch of gingers flying up about in here. And Francis Paul. Folks, thanks for joining the Pulse today. My name is Matt. I appreciate you bearing with me in this, this sermon on the new economic order. I'm just so enamored by it, and it's got so much implications to it. And I just want to encourage you to care for one another. Be like David Lee. Give more hugs. Take care of yourself, folks, and do not mess with Texas. Catch you on Monday. Bye-bye.
Yeah.